gotta tell somebody.
This is the best thing I've ever seen.
Let's talk about that.
You need this. Listen to this.
Memorable and exciting.
Well, then be less boring.
I'm going to tell everyone. Wait here.
Mighty remarkable, Big Daddy. Remarkable?
Welcome to Remarkable, a podcast for B2B marketers that deconstructs the most iconic moments in film, television, pop culture, and advertising for a single purpose: to give you, the B2B marketer, the same storytelling techniques that the pros use. In each episode, you will learn techniques from Hollywood, Pixar, Marvel, and beyond, from Spielberg's hands to yours, bringing remarkable content ideas to you every single week. I'm Ian Faison, CEO of Caspian Studios. This is Remarkable. This week, we're talking about B2B marketing lessons from extreme trail racing.
Trail running for me is just joy, and it's time to really connect to what's important in life, connect to nature, connect to your body.
I love getting out in nature and just switching off from things and just pushing my body to the limit. I really like that combination of pushing myself hard but being somewhere really beautiful at the same time. And like those two things together just make it magic.
With the help of our special guest, Steve Rotter, Chief Marketing Officer at DeepL. DeepL is a global AI company that offers advanced language tools like AI-powered text and voice translation, as well as writing services to help businesses break down language barriers and communicate seamlessly worldwide. Their customers include over 100,000 businesses globally, including notable companies like Zendesk, Coursera, and more. Steve, how are you?
Fantastic, Ian. How are you doing today?
Oh, I am doing fantastic. Excited to chat with you. Why the heck did you pick extreme trail racing today?
Well, I got to say, it's a relatively new sport for me. I was a long distance runner for quite some time. And just about a year ago, we moved to the Blue Ridge Mountains in Virginia. And I took up trail running. And I have to say, it is exactly like marketing. So being a CMO, you have a lot of jobs and a lot of ways to look at the business. But when I think about trail running, it's about running fast. It's about focus. It's about navigation, agility, and ultimately tales of fail. Anybody that's been around marketing long enough knows sometimes things happen and it doesn't always work out. So, recovering from those. So that's my trail running analogy for the world of marketing, because it's one of those things that if you've ever done it, you have to focus. I mean, think about all of us, right? We're bombarded with screens. We have data. We're getting input all the time. And it's so easy to be distracted. I mean, it's so easy. I mean, you just look around at a conference these days. Half the people are on their phones, on their laptops, on their iPads, everywhere you go. But rarely do you see and have the ability for that kind of extreme focus. And, putting it back in marketing terms, I think that's actually a really healthy discipline for marketing teams, is not just to be on that hamster wheel all the time, but to take some time out and say, look, what do we really want to do? What do we want to say? What's our message? What's our story? What's our creative angle? And rarely do you achieve that in moments of extreme distraction, right? It's that focus time that kind of drives those light bulb moments. So that's the trail running connection.
And zooming out, tell us a little bit about your role as CMO of DeepL.
Sure. I joined DeepL about 6 months ago. So it's been an amazing journey. A lot of people maybe heard a little bit about the company. Recently made the news with some world-class investors focusing on AI, Cloud 50, I think, or Cloud 100 award, things like that. But ultimately, this technology is scaling massively. And that's really what I like about it. We're talking about millions of users on a monthly basis, hundreds of thousands of customers around the world, and really a global business operating at global scale. One fun fact, the technology behind the scenes, it's actually being powered by our own supercomputer. It's the 34th fastest supercomputer in the world. So, I mean, there's some real depth, some real technology behind it. Yeah. Got a fun story about that environment. If you think about it, it's, there's a lot of stuff in the news about the negative environmental impact of AI and technology. We're kind of on the opposite end of that. We're operating 100% green tech environment, 100% renewable energy powering this thing. It's actually quite cool.
That's amazing. I love that. Yeah. That's so cool. Meredith, what is extreme trail racing?
So I might lean on Steve a little bit for this one, but from what I've read, extreme trail racing is trail racing. So it's broadly running on an unpaved route outside.
That is Meredith O'Neill, our amazing producer extraordinaire.
So it could be hilly or mountainous or rock paths.
And it is Steve. Whoa!
So I've done at least trail running before, and you're constantly like mentally focused on like jumping over roots and clambering up or down rocks. Like there's ascending, there's climbs, there's going down hills. So you're always focused on sort of what's directly in front of you, and you're facing like all sorts of weather conditions. So it could have just rained, be slippery, and you're just like, can be just toughing it out.
Absolutely covered in mud already.
And then extreme trail racing, I'm assuming, Steve, is like either you're going a far distance or there are some like big climbs and things like that. Can you help me out with like the extreme part of that?
Yeah. I mean, I think that was a great description. And again, anybody that's done any sort of running, jogging on pavement, I think, you're on a treadmill, your mind starts wandering immediately because you don't have to really think about what you're doing. You're just kind of like, oh yeah, I'm thinking about work. I'm thinking about that next, big campaign or presentation. If I think about extreme trail running, it's as you described. There's obstacles. There are routes everywhere. You're almost like it's an agility course, almost like those American Ninja things where they're jumping off of different plateaus and boundaries.
It's sharp, it's technical, it's brutal.
It's climbing. I mean, yesterday I just did a short, trail run with my son, 6 miles. We were climbing up hills that were almost vertical, and you're kind of clawing your way up this. And it just rained the other day, so I mean, it's messy. So I think that's also maybe a little bit parallel to the world of marketing, right? A little bit dangerous, a little bit messy, but oftentimes fun every step of the way. So
I always like to do sort of like a little bit of backgrounding, a little bit of research on whatever we're covering. And for this, like what sort of stood out to me, like there are a couple different directions I could have gone. And there are two things that I was thinking of specifically about what it takes to be successful in extreme trail racing. One is having the right mentality, and the other is having a good support system. And so I did a little bit of research. So when it comes to the psychology of extreme trail racing, right, there are a few terms that come up again and again. And one is resilience. And I was reading an entry from Neil Pallas, who's a mental performance specialist and ultra running coach. And he said resilience is the ability to bounce back from adversity and manage difficult experiences.
It's going to be a lot about focus and concentration and staying calm, not getting flustered.
Which I think we can also apply to marketing and can talk about in a second. But he says this is different from stubbornness or sort of mental toughness to other terms we sort of hear when it comes to running and extreme trail racing, where an athlete could just like push through these and endure these difficulties and obstacles. And he said it's different from that because resilience focuses on the ability to adapt, recover, and grow from adversity. And to add a little bit more nuance to that definition, there was another great quote from Addie Bracey, who's a coach, elite athlete, and she wrote this book, Mental Training for Ultra Running. And she said, and I love her definition, resilience is productively interacting with the reality unfolding in front of you.
The result will be what it will be, but what I can control, and it's the thing I always focus on, is I can always control my effort, my attitude in these events.
So you're sort of dealing with challenges head on. You're being flexible, you're keeping a positive mindset throughout. And she says that it's all about being able to pivot, adapt, or problem solve when faced with those challenges on the trail. So I want to also mention that like resilience is something that takes time to build, right? You don't just come into ultra running or extreme trail racing with resilience. The more you're sort of exposed to the conditions, exposed to adversity, the better you deal with it. But it's also been found that the more psychologically resilient runners are the ones with a support network. And so that could include anything from coaches, mental performance specialists, therapists, but also like other folks who are runners, who are friends, family, like literally supporting you emotionally. And Paula said the biggest mistake we could make is thinking that asking for help is weakness.
To put yourself in a race and to want to be at the front of a race, you've got to have people that believe that you can be there and can pull you back to reality and give you a bigger picture out there.
And so a couple lessons I sort of take from all of that is like resilience, and especially being able to pivot and change course is really important. And these are sort of like lessons we could take from running to apply to marketing. And then also having support, being able to ask for help helps a lot with success as well. But I'm wondering too, Steve, I know you're training for a race coming up and have a lot of experience running, have put in hundreds of miles. And I'm wondering, can you just like paint a picture of us of what it's like being sort of in the thick of an extreme trail race? What are you going through physically and mentally? And then how are there parallels between that sort of mentality and your marketing strategies?
Yeah, great description, Meredith. I think there's a couple things. One is, if I think about the grit and the grind of training, it's putting in the time and the effort and the energy. And that's true for any job, right?
The time, the dedication, the effort, the sacrifice all comes to the start line here.
It's almost cliche, but in many ways, just showing up on a consistent basis is really critical. And that is part of being successful. But I really like what you mentioned about this agility, because in many ways, marketers, like that's the number one challenge. Like the world is changing, especially in technologies where DeepL is at, for example. We're surrounded by AI technologies that are emerging. Every single week, something new happens. I mean, OpenAI launches new products. They, get $1 billion in funding, $6 billion to be more precise. And the changes in the market continue at a very, very rapid pace. So for us, for our marketing team, for example, agility is key. And kind of bringing it back to the trail running thing, out running yesterday, and we had a couple days of rain because of the recent hurricane. And all of a sudden, a trail that was normally a certain way had about a 10-foot river running through it. And you had to cross it and try not to get too wet and fall over. And the obstacles and the course that you thought was one way is different. As I think now, bringing it back to marketing, that's the case for a lot of us. And whether in a fast growing market like AI, any technology, but really any market, being on the lookout for those disruptions, those change of course, the buying pattern changes, all of those. So that was your point number one. Second point was a support network. I remember fondly my first trail run and race. It was a half marathon and it wasn't excessively long, but I was new to the sport. And at the 12-mile mark, this is like, the finish line is in sight. I could see it. And my legs just locked up. I mean, like, could not move them. I was literally grabbing one leg, moving it, grabbing the other leg and moving it. And a guy ran by, his name's still remembered to this day. His name's Matt. He cheered me on. He's like, come on, let's go. He just like nudged me up a little bit, picked me up. And, that was enough to kind of get me going. And, I hit the finish line. I thanked him and he's like, oh, don't worry. I've been there. And he goes, we've all been there. I think that's true of marketing teams. I say this all the time. I mean, marketing is such a fascinating discipline because it's an orchestration of so many different roles. You've got data roles, you've got creative roles, you've got people that are campaign project managers, all of these things coming together to make something happen. And when you do that, it's awesome. But oftentimes those peaks and valleys, we talked about like kind of peak event season for companies and marketers. It's happening right now. And that support network of other people on the team kind of cheering you on, giving you that help makes all the difference in the world.
What goes into preparation for a trail run that's like different than, a half marathon on concrete?
I mean, really, other than the gear being slightly different, cool shoes with like giant treads on them, like it looks like snow tires. It's mostly that. And I think in many ways, it's all of those miles that led up to the race. The preparation happens 3, 6, 9 months before the actual activity and event. And certainly, the obvious parallel to marketing is those campaigns that launch or those events that you put on or those things that you do. Good example, we just did an event called Demexco. If you're familiar with it, it's a very, very large event in Europe. 40,000 marketers converged on this event for 3 days. And all of the work and preparation that went into that, from the planning of our launch. We launched cool new technology at this event, the booth, the people in the booth, the demos, all of that. It's probably a 3-month prep process, right? And all marketers know, like, you don't just show up and hope for the best. You got to do that work well in advance. And then the day of, you're actually quite relaxed about it.
So like once you get going, get into the flow of things and be happy to be here.
And not that that's exactly how you feel when you're doing that extreme trail run is relaxed, but certainly you're confident.
So I've visualized, I feel like, every situation that could go down.
Maybe that's the word, right? You're not sitting there going, am I going to make it? What's going to happen? You know that you know that you know. And that's the big difference.
Do you practice on the same route? Is that even possible? Or are you just trying to practice like, you live in the mountains. So you're just practicing, there every day. But if you were, going to the desert, it's going to be totally different terrain and all that sort of stuff. So curious.
Yeah, certainly being in the same environment helps because you at least know the variance or the range of things that you're going to encounter. But a couple weeks ago, when I was actually in Europe for a conference, we have a channel, Slack channel at DeepL called Runners, and I asked the like, hey, any place around here where I can find rocks, roots, and rivers for a 15-mile run or something like that. And unfortunately, there wasn't in that area because it's relatively flat. But I found a park. And then in the park, there was like an adjacent forest. And there was actually a really good spot to go. So not necessarily always practicing on the same course, but maybe building some of that same muscle memory that you need in order to be successful. Bringing it back to marketing, not every campaign is going to look the same, but the tactics and tools that you do in order to make those successful, the workflows around campaign team handoffs with production and creative and things like that, you build those in many ways each and every time you're launching those things. So a good parallel example, I guess, is it doesn't have to be the exact same trail, the exact same thing, but the process by getting there, you learn every time.
So I have not done a ton of trail running in my life, but I did do a lot of running on trails when I was in the Army, and a lot of ruck marches and ruck runs and different sort of things.
Ooh, it sounds
to that
fun.
effect. Yeah. Right. It was less fun when it was my job. And then now I find myself, going camping and doing all the outdoor stuff as I've gotten older. And, when it's not your job anymore, I don't know, it just makes it a little bit easier.
Right. Now it's recreation.
I know. Isn't that funny? It was fun when I lived in Colorado. People were like, man, you didn't go camping and fishing and do all that stuff when you lived in Colorado. I was like, dude, from Monday to Friday, I was, in a Humvee in the middle of, a high desert. The last thing I wanted to do is, go sleep, not in my bed again. But anywho, so I have some takeaways. The first thing is, and this is a little bit more of a hiking thing, but I think it matters for this too. 1 ounce doesn't seem like a lot, but over 20 miles, it's a lot. And I think there's like so much extra weight that marketers carry around, whether it's people on your team or whether it's technical debt or whether it's sort of like brand debt or relationship debt with sort of like senior leaders or something like that, where that stuff doesn't feel like it's a big deal, but in the blink of an eye, it's been 2 years and you've been carrying around all that stuff with you the whole time. And like, once you don't have it, you start to feel it. So yeah, I think that, the lighter you can be, the better it is. And like all the, ultra backpackers and people like that have these like insanely light things and, they make their own water and they have water stops all, scheduled out and all those things. Like there's a reason why.
Well, and it's interesting you bring that up because I use a very similar analogy with the marketing teams I work with, and it's not running related, but those big crab boats, and you see them on these TV specials, and they start out and they throw out this net, and they start catching a few sea animals and so forth. They're going at a certain speed, and then next thing you know, that the net's half full and they're slowing down, and the next scene they've got a million crabs in there, but the boat is just chugging along. And I think that's how marketing teams get is that energy and velocity eventually just gets crippled by compounding projects and meetings. And one of the things I share with my team is, look, we need to stay fast. We need to stay agile. So one of the ways to do that is you completely rethink how you attack projects. One of our favorite things to do is you take something that normally would take, let's just say 9 weeks, weekly meetings. You guys all know the routine. Everybody meets for an hour and you come back next week and you forgot half the stuff and it's another reset on the context of what's going on. You take that exact same project, you put those people in a room and you say, okay, this is a hackathon. We're buying pizza. Take this project and get it done by the end of the day. And it's usually 10 times better, 10 times faster. And you eliminate that crab ship kind of mentality or problem of just things slowing down and, getting to that point where slow marketers, I think, are much less creative.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think part of the problem too is that seeking consensus is just like not always a good thing. Like you don't need, like to get 10 people to agree on a project is like really hard. Like there's a reason why the best creatives in the world execute a singular vision, right? It's Steven Spielberg or, Oprah or, whoever, that they're executing their vision for what they want it to be. They have a million talented people working for them that are contributing to that vision, but it's not every single person sort of weighing in and saying, well, we could do this, we could do that. And I think that like, that's where like singular projects, it's just like, you got to have someone whose vision it is to take it and run with it.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, consensus creative work rarely is brilliant.
Okay, so my second takeaway here.
All right.
From trail running, extreme trail running, is step where others have stepped. And I think that this is something that when you're running and you see that log that has a footprint on it and you're looking out 20 feet and you go, if I step on that footprint, I know that the person before me didn't slip and break the log, because otherwise I would see that that's the case. Or the rock that in the middle of the stream that has the footprint on it. And you go, well, that rock clearly supported a person running across it. And so often, and I do a lot of sort of off trail type stuff, and you just get in trouble real quick when you go off trail because you just don't know what that stuff is. And there's times where you have to go off trail and there's times where you have to stop and figure it out and, replan or redo whatever. But if you have somebody's footprints right there in front of you, you can just stay right in their footprints. There's a great analogy that's completely outside of this, that's animal related, but they've done studies where they've had bears, they've looked at like grizzly bears or black bears or whatever, and that they will actually step in the same exact paw print that they stepped in the previous year when they locked their area, that areas of rock will literally be ground down over generations of bears using the same trail, using the same footprints and things like that, because that is the best way through the mountain. And I think that's a great analogy for marketing.
It happened to me yesterday. I was on a run with my son. He was ahead of me and it was really, really wet. And he went through this area that was just like puddles everywhere. And I even yelled, I'm like, I'm really glad you're ahead of me. And he's like, why? And I said, because I'm able to see exactly where the really, really deep, muddy spots are and where they're not. It was great. And it's exactly like you said, there was this kind of path to performance that was there right in front of me. And I just needed to take advantage of it.
Yeah. And then my counter to that is sometimes nobody has stepped where you've gone and you need to plan your own route. And I think that there's this balance of speed versus, slowing down to plan your route. And I think that like a lot of times, in my opinion, B2B marketing teams slow down and plan way too much. And they're way overly concerned with the perfect plan rather than like running. And like at the end of the day, like you have to move. Like you have to keep moving. You can't just sit there and like stare at the river and figure out the exact perfect thing. Like you're going to get wet. It's not going to be great. Yes, you might get a little bit wetter one way or the other. You should slow down and figure out the right path. But at the end of the day, like you got to make a decision and keep moving. And so many people just crippled by indecision. Their CEOs or their boards or all these people crippled by, well, is that the right decision? Is that the right decision? Like you got to, set your North Star, make your decisions according to that. Is this marketing campaign in service of your customer? Are they going to like it? Is this something that speaks to the business that you're trying to create in the future that you're trying to create? Yes, then it's probably okay, and like, if it's a wrong bet, then you recalculate next time. But like, you can't just sit there and hem and haw over it forever.
Yeah, I have to say, Ian, it sounds like you were in one of my meetings earlier today because that was the exact message that, we spoke about. And it connects to a couple of bigger issues that marketing teams as well as other B2B organizations struggle with. My take on this is that in many cases, you have very data-driven businesses. And by definition, marketing has become almost a data-driven skill set that has to be present. But in many ways, it's that analysis paralysis that slows them down because they're waiting for perfect data. And my exact message was almost a quote from you, which is, we can't wait for perfection. We have to show progress. And that was ultimately the message from me as part of this story. Now, one of the other things that I think has to go hand in hand with that is a leadership approach that is acceptable and has a tolerance, and there's no fear of failure. Like if you have marketers that are afraid, like if they make a mistake, they're going to get yelled at or fired, then of course they're going to take time because they're going to just like wait for perfect. Whereas if you build a culture in your marketing team around speed, velocity, and learn from your mistakes, then you got a good recipe. So I've seen that over and over again, but I'm glad you brought that up because it's true. You can't wait for those perfect bare footprints in the same rock every single time because it's going to be different.
Yeah. And sometimes you know the way up the mountain and sometimes you don't, and sometimes it's like, I'm not going to be able to get the right way. Like, if you've ever looked at the topo map and you're like, you see the contours, you maybe even have a 3D view and you look and you're like, I got a pretty good idea. And then you get to the ground level and you're like, I didn't know there were rocks everywhere. You know what I mean? Like, it's those little things. Like, I was in a field this past weekend on the topo map where I was camping. On the topo map, it is flat. On the satellite map, it's green. So you think this is a field. You just walk through it. It's a field. And you get there, and it turns out that there were like 4-foot high bushes, like almost the entire field. So it wasn't a field, it was 4-foot high bushes. To the map, that's flat. We're at like 7,000 feet. So the map just considers it flat. And it's green just like the grass is green. So in reality, it was a field full of 4-foot bushes, which is really difficult if you're a 6-foot tall person. You know what I mean? So it's like, those are the type of things that like we could have planned all these sort of things. And then you hit the ground and now it's like, oh shit, we have to throw this whole plan out the window because now all this stuff is here. And I think that those are the sort of things that like at the end of the day, you just have to make a gut decision and try to execute it and have a plan B or plan C of other stuff that you could do.
Yeah, it's interesting you brought that example up. There's a place not too far from where we often run. It's called Devil's Marble Yard. And if you looked at just the trail, it's only 1.25 miles. And you'd think, oh, well, okay, that's like a walk in the park. And the grade is not that steep, but it is literally just a boulder field of giant rocks about the size of a car. And you are on your hands and knees crawling up these giant boulders. It's fascinating. Look it up when you get a chance, but just the visual of it is called Devil's Marble Yard. And it is just this extremely strange part of the Blue Ridge Mountains. They're just giant boulders that somehow got dragged there and put in this one part of the entire Blue Ridge Mountains. So fascinating.
I have one bonus takeaway here.
All right.
That when I was in the Army, we used to do this hike called the Incline in Colorado Springs. And so basically the Incline it's the side of, it's on Pikes Peak. And basically it's a former, like a pulley system that pulled up like a train that went up vertically up this hill. Anyways, it's long been since it is no longer there. And what is left is basically all of the essentially train tracks. So they're basically big, like 2-foot by 2-foot, gigantic wooden steps in the ground. So it's basically like a gigantic staircase that you essentially can't really do in like one step, like a 2-step staircase. And it goes up and it's 1,000 feet of elevation, I think in, I don't know, a short amount of time. So anyways, we used to run up this thing. It was very challenging. You run up in the winter or in the summer and you're like, oh, this is extremely hard and you're dying by the end. And if you're going pretty quick, it's probably like about 40 minutes. In the winter, we show up and there's these old dudes and they're putting these things on their shoes. I'm like, I wonder what those are. And they're these little rubber things that you put on the outside of your shoes. And they have little metal wires on the bottom. And it's for, traction. You just put it right over your tennis shoes or whatever. And it's for traction on the ice. Well, you could imagine how much slower you go when you don't have those on, whereas these guys are just flying up the hill. And like, it's such a great like life and out. These things cost like $15, you know what I mean? And you're like, it's the difference between like 20 minutes or 30 minutes to go up this thing if you do or don't have these, not to mention the safety concerns. And like, I feel like that with marketing where there's certain things sometimes where it's like, just like a little bit extra planning or a tool or foresight that can get you such bigger results. And people like, for whatever reason, and executives are horrible at this, they won't do it. Like one of the things that drives me crazy, a quick side note, is just like people who don't buy a nice microphone. And you're like, you're an executive who makes X amount of dollars a year. It's $200 to buy a nice one. What are you doing?
Yeah.
It's the clarity of your voice. Like, what are you doing? So anyways, stuff like that.
It's true. I mean, I'll go back to one of my CMO isms and I've shared this with my team. They're kind of sick of hearing it, but I'll do it anyway. And it's not mine. I didn't invent it. It's actually from the Marriott Corporation. I saw it on the wall in the Fairfield Inn in Lynchburg, Virginia. And it's a saying is part of the Marriott kind of code of conduct. And it's basically this: it's the little things that make the big things possible. And I grabbed that because I felt like that's so true of marketing. It's exactly your example, Ian, with like the right microphone. Or we did this event with DeepL at this conference a couple weeks ago in Europe. And it was the little things that made the big things possible. It was the chocolates with the branding on it. It was the espresso machine in the booth that had the, not just cups, but like cups that actually told a story about who DeepL is, right? And we saw all those things come together, but it's exactly true for marketers. It's those little things that make a world of difference. Subject lines in emails, headlines on press releases, all of those things have a huge, huge impact.
Yeah, the thing that I tell our team, both marketing and on the production side, is that there's no traffic on the extra mile. It's like people just don't want to go the extra mile. But it's like, it's the finishes of your house, right? It's like your house costs, whatever your house, let's say a house costs $1 million. And the house will look like crap if you don't do the finishes. And the finishes probably will cost you $2,000. You know what I mean? And people won't do the finishes the right way. It's like you buy $1 million house and they're like, well, I don't know if I can really go and get the, blinds that are nice. And you're like, but it's those little things. And it's like, I'm going to go run the incline every week for the next year, but I'm not going to spend the $15 on the little, clip-on things on your shoes, even though they will make you far better, more productive, and enjoy the thing that you're trying to do.
Those are critical on the ice and snow. We did a trail run back in the Chicago area called the Frozen Gnome. Imagine January or February in the outskirts of Chicago, and you could get a picture of ice, snow, and extreme temperatures. So,
okay, just wanted to switch gears a little bit about how you think about brand and content at DeepL.
Sure. I mean, we are technology in a very hot market. AI is getting put on any sort of technology out there. So in many ways, our number one job with content is education. We've got to educate the market on why DeepL does what it does, but also on the broader scope of AI. I mean, again, you think about the explosion of technologies out there. Most people think of ChatGPT or Gemini or Anthropic or Perplexity and, these kind of general purpose tools for general purpose activities. You can use it to write a poem. You can use it to, solve a puzzle, but they're very general purpose. At DeepL, it's quite different. It's a specialized type of AI, specialized model, specialized training and tuning for a unique purpose. And when we look at the market, we see this pressure. We see organizations, customers, they're struggling because they see the potential of AI, but they don't know where to start. So a lot of our content, going back to your question, Ian, is geared toward how do we educate the market on these two alternatives? Large kind of general purpose Swiss Army knife technology or specialized technology for a unique option or a unique business case that you need to use and you can use right away. Now you start having a conversation around, oh, I see. That's how I can apply that. So much of it right now is just, I think the explosion and the news cycles around this kind of technology are moving so fast, the market's a little bit overwhelmed. So we're trying to be very helpful in our approach, trying to be very educational, trying to be very empathetic, which is, again, marketers are often more about volume than feelings. But ultimately, I share this with my team. Like, look, this is what our customers are going through. They're seeing this in the news every day. They're seeing the confusion, the pressure. They're seeing lawsuits about the copyright infringements. But at the same time, they're getting pressure from their boards. They're getting pressure to do something. And if you look at the budget shift into AI initiatives, it's astounding. It's one of the single most significant shifts in spend in the last 10 years. So the pressure's there and the potential's there. Now, what do you do with it? So yeah, back to your question, Ian, our content focus is make people understand, help them understand and guide them. And that's how we feel we can have the biggest impact now instead of selling and pushing and trying to drive our agenda.
What type of things are you creating?
A couple of layers on that, right? So if I think about the first and foremost, I would say it's just thought leadership content around the market, around the world of AI and so forth. But right behind that, we're trying to tell our story through our customers. We talk about the use cases, people that have gone before, companies that are using DeepL, like Deutsche Bahn, 3 billion, I think, train and transportation initiatives every single year within this country. The numbers are astounding. And they're using DeepL as kind of a technology to make their customers more successful. So painting the picture of what other companies are doing is a really effective way of helping companies kind of overcome these barriers or this risk aversion to something new. And that's really a big part of it.
Amazing. I love that. And I love the, accelerating those customer stories. So easy to understand, in a complex sort of new market, right? To just see like, what are people actually doing? I love that.
And especially when you can make it as relatable to their either industry segment or geographic segment or use case. And that's one of the things we did almost immediately is we said, okay, we have this, what is today perceived as a horizontal technology for translation, similar to what you might see in Google Translate, but something that's way, way more accurate. So what we do is we paint the picture of like, what does this mean for your business when you're able to reach your customers in their language, in their market? And would that help you expand your business faster? Would it help you connect with customers better? Would it help drive internal productivity across teams that might be in different geographies? All of those different use cases, all of a sudden the light bulbs go off and they're like, oh yeah, I could see how I could use that. And then next thing you know, you're in a discussion more about how do we make it happen versus why would I do this?
Well, I think too, there's just such I know you know this, but there's such a massive sort of global play when you're doing translation and localization and these sort of things that allows you to tell such a global story. Like you have this massive big narrative and then all these like smaller sort of more use case narratives. The idea is like, how much better is the world, going to be when we can understand each other better and your products can be in every language and it's going to be way more accurate than it is now and all those things. It's like, that's a pretty exciting world.
It's true. And I think in many cases, most organizations, most executives they're worried about cost performance. They're worried about the productivity increases that they can get through AI. But the bigger potential here is reaching new markets and expanding their business, driving that top line growth rather than kind of shaving a few, dollars of productivity here and there across the organization. Although that does happen, it will happen. Ultimately, that potential of like, wow, I could be in 10 markets in the next 6 months. And it's not so daunting. I mean, a lot of organizations, when they think about global expansion, weighing in the back of their mind is, well, I really got to localize all my my website content and all my contracts and all of this. And if you have a technology that makes that incredibly accurate and incredibly fast, you unlock a tremendous, tremendous market potential for them.
What is one piece of advice that you give to other CMOs as they're thinking about their, content and brand strategy?
The first lines up very specifically with what we talked about with regard to trail running, which is speed. I think in many ways, just the baggage in that, the slowing down kills marketing teams. And when it comes to content, I think ultimately you want to move fast. And that means the second thing is you've got to organize your team for that kind of velocity. And maybe that means rethinking how you do content. In many cases, that might mean bringing in contractors, specialists, subject matter experts. And I would say in many ways, the thing that most marketers miss out on is the massive potential for their extended team outside of marketing, whether that's your sales leaders, your sales engineers, your customer success teams, your implementation teams. There's so much knowledge. And unfortunately, those teams are usually so busy. But if you can orchestrate a way to tap into that, whether you hire a couple of in-house journalists that just do like on the street interviews and you're talking to those people and you're bringing that information forward, you could create a tremendous amount of great storytelling and content and sound bites and those customer examples that really are so valuable. But, getting those out of the organization is often tough and often relegated to a person or a team in customer marketing. You got to rethink that model completely. So those are a couple areas where I see, CMOs struggle, myself included in that, because we get a little bit landlocked. We get a little bit siloed in our marketing world. And there's a lot of smart people in our organization that we can tap into. For us at DeepL, another big piece of that, there's an army of PhDs that are just so knowledgeable on the technology, which in the world of AI, that's a pretty important topic. People want to know how it works because it's mysterious. And I'll come kind of full circle even further. We have this amazing data center that we use to power our technology. And I think sometimes technologists take these things for granted. I was talking to our, the head of IT, and I'm, David, and we were talking about this. I'm like, David, tell me about the data center. He goes, oh, well, that's really fast. And we've got 4,000 NVIDIA GPUs. I'm like, we're not telling this story. Are you kidding? This is a brilliant story. And then I end up connecting with the head of the data center. He's like, yeah, this is actually this complete green tech environment where we've used wood beam construction to minimize steel and cement. We're powering this thing by 75% hydro, 25% wind. The heat from the GPUs is getting pumped over to a local facility to dry wood pellets to heat homes in Sweden. I'm like, are you kidding me? This is a great story. So again, I think those stories are out there in every company. You just got to find them and tap into things beyond just like, oh, we're going to write a blog post about the latest product release. Okay, great. But there's more. There's more to that story.
Love that. Steve, it's been wonderful having you on the show. For our listeners, for our marketing listeners, go to DeepL.com and check y'all out. If you need translation, writing, API, integrations, got it all. And, marketers, we need this stuff. So go check out DeepL. Any final thoughts, Steve? Anything to plug?
No, I think we covered it. A lot of fun with the trail racing analogy. As I'm out there running that next race and climbing some muddy mountain, I'll be thinking marketing, and I'll be thinking about my next opportunity to share that with the team and say, marketing's a lot like being covered in mud or something like that. But that'll be, I guess, a segment for another day. But no, Ian, it's been great. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Thanks for joining the show. Well, that's it for today. I hope you got some good ideas for your B2B content. Thank you for listening to Remarkable. I'm Ian Faison, CEO of Caspian Studios. Remarkable is created by the team at Caspian Studios, B2B podcast as a service. Caspian also creates fiction series for B2B companies, so if you want a business thriller, you can learn more at caspianstudios.com. Hollywood-style storytelling for B2B. And in today's episode, you heard from myself, Ian Faison, and Meredith O'Neill, senior producer here at Caspian Studios. Remarkable was produced this week by Meredith O'Neill, mixed by Scott Goodrich, and our theme song is Solomon by Falak. Be remarkable and rise above the noise. It'll literally be like a minute. This week, we're talking about remarkable marketing lessons from extreme trail racing with the help of our special guest, Steve Rotter, Chief Marketing Officer at DeepL. DeepL is a global AI company that offers advanced language tools like AI-powered text and voice translation, as well as writing services to help businesses break down language barriers and communicate seamlessly worldwide. Their customers include over 100,000 businesses globally, including notable companies like Zendesk, Coursera, and more. Steve, how are you? It'll literally be like a minute. This week, we're talking about remarkable marketing lessons from extreme trail racing with the help of our special guest, Steve Rotter, Chief Marketing Officer at DeepL. DeepL is a global AI company that offers advanced language tools like AI-powered text and voice translation, as well as writing services to help businesses break down language barriers and communicate seamlessly worldwide. Their customers include over 100,000 businesses globally, including notable companies like Zendesk, Coursera, and more. Steve, how are you? It'll literally be like a minute. This week, we're talking about remarkable marketing lessons from extreme trail racing with the help of our special guest, Steve Rotter, Chief Marketing Officer at DeepL. DeepL is a global AI company that offers advanced language tools like AI-powered text and voice translation, as well as writing services to help businesses break down language barriers and communicate seamlessly worldwide. Their customers include over 100,000 businesses globally, including notable companies like Zendesk, Coursera, and more. Steve, how are you?